Good morning, everyone. Before we dive into the 7 habits themselves today, let me share a really powerful story straight from Covey's book. It absolutely perfectly sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about. So let's set the scene. Picture this. You're out on the open ocean. It's the dead of night and the fog is just impossibly thick. Like, you can barely see a few feet in front of you. Now, a massive military battleship is cutting through this heavy mist. The tension on the bridge? It's completely palpable. Everyone's on high alert because visibility is essentially zero. Then, suddenly, a lookout spots something. Piercing right through the darkness and the fog, there's a light. And it's not off in the distance to the side, it's directly ahead, right in the battleship's path.
So the captain in the battleship immediately springs into action. He quickly assesses the situation, and acting with the absolute authority you'd expect from a commanding officer, he orders his crew to signal the mysterious vessel up ahead. The message they flash to the fog is short, sharp, and leaves absolutely no room for debate. They signal, "Change your course 20 degrees. It's just a standard command, fully expecting the other vessel to yield.
But then, a signal flashes back through the fog. And the reply is definitely not what anyone on the bridge of that battleship expected to see. Instead of immediate compliance, the reply comes back totally calm yet entirely defiant. It simply reads, "You change your course 20 degrees." I mean, imagine being the captain in that moment. You're commanding a massive warship and some unknown vessel is telling you to move? Well, as you can probably guess, the captain is furious. How dare this other vessel challenge his direct order? He immediately decides to pull rank. He needs to make sure whoever is out there in that fog understands exactly who they're dealing with. So he sends another message, and this time he leans heavily into his title and his authority. He signals back, "I am a captain. Change your course immediately." You can feel the tension escalating now. The captain is waiting for the apology, right? Waiting for the other ship to quickly turn away. But the answer flashes back through the mist, entirely unfazed by the captain's title. The response reads, "I am a seaman. You should change your course." Now, the contrast here is just profound. You've got a captain on one side throwing around his high-ranking title, and on the other side, a lower-ranking seaman who is completely unyielding, absolutely steady, and just utterly refusing to budge an inch.
At this point, the captain has had enough. He's angry, his authority has been questioned twice now, and a collision is imminent. He decides to play his ultimate trump card. He skips past his own title and goes straight to the sheer, undeniable physical power of his vessel. He sends his final, furious message, "I am a battleship, change your course." It is the ultimate assertion of dominance and control. The captain waits, fully expecting this smaller, weaker vessel to finally scatter out of his way in a complete panic. But the final response comes back, cutting right through the fog, cutting through the ego, and completely shattering the captain's entire illusion of control. The message simply says, "I am a lighthouse." And just like that, the argument was over. The battleship changed course. Why? Because you cannot argue with the lighthouse. You can't intimidate it, and you certainly can't sail through it. The battleship had to adapt instantly to reality the very moment that absolute truth was revealed.
Section 1. The Epiphany. Navigating Unchanging Reality. This simple story teaches a really profound lesson about how we live our lives. It perfectly illustrates the concept of a principle. You see, just like that captain, sometimes we go through life believing we're entirely right, completely powerful, and totally in control of our surroundings. But life operates according to principles that just do not change. Principles are fixed, unchanging realities. They're literally the lighthouses of life. It doesn't matter how angry you get, how much authority you think you have, or how big your personal battleship is, you have to navigate around them. If you try to crash against a principle, the principle won't break. You will. Section 2. The Illusion of Shortcuts. Why Techniques Fail. Stephen Covey actually wrote this book because he looked around at modern society and recognized a massive, widespread problem. He saw an entire culture operating under a total illusion. Covey noticed that so many people out there are just desperately trying to find the easy way out. We're constantly chasing shortcuts, relying on temporary techniques, little life hacks, and superficial personality tricks to get ahead. It's essentially the exact equivalent of the captain trying to talk his way out of moving his ship. People are trying to game the system of life, using quick fixes to try and manage their relationships, their careers, and their personal growth. But what happens when we do this? When we try to use these superficial tricks to navigate the really deep waters of life? Well, the tragic irony, as Covey observed, is that even when people achieve outward success using these techniques, the ultimate result is feeling unhappy, stressed, and completely unfulfilled. They feel empty. because a life built on shortcuts is fundamentally out of alignment with those unchanging lighthouse principles we just talked about.
Section 3. The inside-out approach, starting from within.
So if the outside-in methods, the quick fixes and the hacks, are failing us, we have to completely reverse our paradigm. The contrast here is super clear. On one hand, we have where most people spend their time, relying on personality tricks, shortcuts, focusing outward on how we appear to others, and trying to manipulate situations. It's exhausting and honestly pretty superficial. On the other hand, Covey argues that true, lasting effectiveness only comes from focusing inward. It comes from building character, defining your core values, and aligning your life with those fixed, unchanging principles. It is a completely different foundation. So the crucial point, what Covey calls the inside-out approach, is this. Instead of trying to change the world first, we must change ourselves. You just cannot effectively manage your external environment, your colleagues, your friends, or your family until you have fundamentally managed your own internal character. The change absolutely has to radiate from the inside out.
Section 4. The Roadmap, the 7 Habits Journey.
Now, Covey doesn't just leave us hanging with a theory here. He gives us a very precise roadmap. He organizes this profound internal transformation into a structured journey. Notice how sequential it is. Step 1 is the personal victory. This covers habits 1, 2, and 3. You have to start right here, inside yourself, mastering your own character before you can do anything else. Once you achieve that private victory, you move to step 2, the public victory. That's habits 4, 5, and 6. This is where you take your newly aligned character and learn how to work effectively and harmoniously with other people. And finally, step 3, habit 7, is the habit of continuous renewal, which makes sure that you maintain and grow this effectiveness over an entire lifetime.
I want to leave you with a really important question to chew on today as we wrap up this explainer. Think about your current frustrations, your own current roadblocks. Are you acting like that battleship captain? Are you aggressively trying to steer the lighthouse, hoping the unchanging principles of life will just somehow get out of your way? Or are you ready to accept reality, change your course, and truly begin the difficult but incredibly rewarding inside-out journey? Think about it. Let's explore these habits one by one.
We are talking about habit number 1, be proactive. Honestly, if you want to become a highly effective person, this is ground zero. It's the absolute foundation for taking complete ownership of your life and your career.
But, before we throw a bunch of definitions at you, I want you to stop and ask yourself a pretty serious question. Who is actually controlling your actions? Like, when things go sideways, do your external circumstances dictate how you behave? Or do your daily choices lead the way? Think about it, because the answer to that question reveals almost everything about where you're headed in life.
Okay, let's dive right into this. To really grasp this concept, we're going to hit 5 key areas today. The power to choose, reactive versus proactive workplaces, circles of concern, circles of influence, and finally, the freedom to choose.
So, starting with Section 1, the power to choose. Now, proactive is one of those words that gets tossed around in corporate jargon all the time, right? But here it has a very specific, powerful meaning. Being proactive means taking absolute responsibility for your life. It's the concrete realization that your behavior is determined entirely by your choices, not your circumstances. You are the driver of the car. You're not just a passenger reacting to every single bump in the road.
Moving on to Section 2, reactive versus proactive workplaces.
So, the harsh reality? Most people are reactive. It's true. When the market shifts, when a project completely tanks, or a deadline flies right by, our natural human instinct is to immediately look outward. We get defensive, we point fingers, we blame the environment because, let's face it, it's fast, it's easy, and it completely takes the heat off of us. Now, what's really interesting about this is the stark contrast in the language people use. A reactive employee will say, "My boss makes me angry," or "the economy is bad." They're basically acting as a victim to their workplace. But proactive people, they think totally differently. In that exact same tough economy, or dealing with that exact same difficult boss, they ask, okay, what can I do? And what is within my control? They pivot instantly from blaming to problem solving. And hey, this mindset extends way beyond just the office. A reactive person might say, "My family doesn't support me," framing the whole situation as a dead end. But a proactive individual takes that exact same lack of support and asks, "How can I improve?" They turn the focus right back to their own development, completely regardless of what the people around them are doing or saying.
All right, Section 3, circles of concern.
The source material introduces this absolutely brilliant framework to help us map out our mental energy. It's called the circle of concern, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It includes everything we worry about. Think of this circle as a giant bucket holding all the external factors, the big global anxieties, and those annoying daily frustrations that we stress over, but ultimately we just don't dictate. So what actually lives inside this circle? Things like a bad economy, an angry boss, a lack of family support, or even really difficult exam questions. You seeing the pattern here? These are all external things that happen to us. Spending all your time and mental energy focusing on these things is the literal definition of being reactive. You're basically just spinning your tires in the mud.
Which brings us to Section 4, Circles of Influence.
Now, this circle of influence includes the things we can actually control. I really want you to let that sink in for a second. This right here is where your true power lies. It's not in wishing the world was somehow different, but in taking charge of the things that you can directly impact today. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate difference between the two mindsets. Over in your circle of concern, you've got the economy, the boss's anger, the difficult exam, stuff you just can't control. But over in your circle of influence, you have your response to the economy. You have your personal improvement, regardless of your boss's mood, and you have your own studying and preparing for that exam. This right here is the dividing line. Reactive people waste their energy on the left, while proactive people focus theirs on the right. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. Effective people focus their energy almost exclusively on their circle of influence. It's not that they ignore reality, right? They just refuse to spend their limited time and emotional capital on things they can't change. Instead, they actually shrink their circle of concern by expanding their circle of influence. Let's walk through a super practical application of this from our source material. Imagine a scenario where a student is just totally consumed with worry about how difficult the upcoming exam questions might be. Now, the difficulty of those questions is entirely in the professor's hands, right? That means it squarely belongs in the circle of concern. So what does a proactive student do about it? Well, they shift their energy. They take 3 very distinct steps. They focus their attention, they practice the material, and they prepare systematically. Studying, practicing, and preparing, those are 100% within the circle of influence. By doing this, they've effectively taken back control of their own success. It's that simple. And that leads us to our final part, Section 5, the freedom to choose. Look, if you take only one thing away from this entire explainer, let it be this. We cannot always control what happens to us. The markets will crash, bosses will be totally unreasonable, and exams will be difficult. That is life. But we can always control our response. Your true power is never found in the initial circumstance. It is found entirely in how you respond to it. The source material perfectly encapsulates this idea with a profound quote from Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist and a Holocaust survivor. He said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and power to choose." Just think about that space for a moment. That right there is the essence of habit 1. Being proactive isn't about being loud or pushy or overly aggressive. It's about recognizing and actually utilizing that sacred, quiet space between the thing that happens to you and how you choose to react to it. It's about consciously stepping into your circle of influence. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to carry with you as you finish up this explainer and go about your day. The next time you face a difficult or frustrating situation, remember that you have a gap. In the space between stimulus and response, what will you choose today? We're looking at habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. Okay, let's dive into this, because this isn't just another flashy time management trick, you know? This is about defining the entire trajectory of your existence. If you've ever felt like you're just going through the motions, checking off boxes, and wondering where it's all heading, well, this explainer is exactly what you need. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The ultimate wake-up call. So before we even start talking about goals or productivity hacks, I need you to hit pause on your autopilot routine. Really, put down whatever else you're doing, clear your mind of your to-do list, and prepare yourself for a pretty heavy thought experiment. Imagine you're attending a funeral. You walk through the doors of the chapel, you look around the room, you see the flowers, hear the quiet murmurs. And as you look toward the front, it hits you. It's your own funeral. Your family is there, your friends are there, your colleagues are there. They've all gathered in this one room on this specific day to honor your life. Just hold that image in your mind for a second. As they stand up to speak, as they look back on the life you actually lived,
what would you want them to say about you? Really sit with that for a moment. How would you want to be remembered? Think about the character they describe, the specific contributions they'd highlight, the actual impact you had on their daily lives. So the crucial point is, this profound, deeply personal exercise forms the very foundation of habit 2. Think about it. If you don't know the answer to how you want to be remembered at the very end of your life, how on earth can you possibly know what you should be doing today? And that brings us straight to our definition. Begin with the end in mind means living with a clear vision of your destination. Notice that wording there, a clear vision. This completely elevates the whole concept from a simple productivity tip to an absolutely foundational life philosophy. It means knowing exactly where you're going so that you can actually understand where you are right now. It makes sure that the steps you take today are genuinely moving you in the right direction. Section 2. The wrong success ladder. All right, on one side, we've got the activity, climbing the ladder of success. But on the other side, we have the destination, making sure that ladder is actually leaning against the right wall. The tragic irony here, and it happens all the time, is that people spend years, sometimes literal decades, exhausting themselves climbing the ladder of success, only to get to the very top and discover it was leaning against the wrong wall the entire time. Activity simply does not equal achievement if your ladder is misplaced. Section 3. Your personal mission statement. Let's move to and see how this builds into finding your right wall. To avoid that wrong wall, Covey strongly encourages us to create a personal mission statement. Think of it as a master framework for your life. First up, it defines who you want to become. We're talking about your ultimate character here. Second, what you stand for, those unshakable principles. And third, what matters most, your true, undeniable priorities. By getting this down on paper, you're equipping yourself to define your core values crystal clear. You are literally drawing the blueprint for the wall you want your ladder leaning against. For example, take a look at this. My mission is to inspire others, continuously learn, and live with integrity. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how incredibly liberating a concrete statement like this is for your daily decisions. Should I take this new job? Should I spend my weekend doing this random project? You don't have to agonize over it. You just hold the decision right up to your mission statement. If it aligns, boom, you do it. If it doesn't, you skip it. It's a real game changer, the ultimate filtering tool for your life. Section 4. The power of intention. Look, without vision, we drift. We just let circumstances or other people or random chance dictate where we end up. But with vision, we lead our lives intentionally. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate takeaway of this explainer. Vision is the absolute antidote to simply drifting through life. When you begin with the end in mind, you are no longer just a passenger in the back seat. You are the driver, hands firmly on the wheel. So I want to leave you with a final thought to carry with you today. Really look at this question. Which wall is your ladder leaning against right now? And what is your mission statement going to be? Please don't let this just be some intellectual exercise you forget by tomorrow. Actually take out a piece of paper today, think back to that funeral visualization we started with, and start writing. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep focusing, and I'll catch you next time. We're diving straight into Stephen Covey's Habit 3, put first things first. If you've ever felt like you're just running on a hamster wheel, exhausted but somehow going absolutely nowhere, you are definitely not alone, and you are in the perfect place. Let's break this powerful framework down and figure out how to go from just being busy to being, well, genuinely and undeniably effective. Let's get right into it. But first, I really want you to stop and ask yourself, are you doing more, or are you actually doing the right things? Look, it is so incredibly easy to mistake mere activity for actual achievement, right? We finish our day totally wiped out, our to-do list has all these check marks, but there's still that sinking feeling that we didn't touch anything truly meaningful. That exhaustion, yeah, it's very real. But is it actually moving the needle on the stuff you care about most? That is exactly the tension we're going to unpack today. Which brings us to Section 1, knowing what matters. Before we can even touch a calendar or organize a schedule, we have to lay down the foundation. Because, honestly, you simply cannot prioritize your life until you know your underlying values. To really get Habit 3, we have to quickly anchor it to Habit 2. Habit 3 is defined as the practical application of Habit 2. Now, Habit 2 was all about the vision, right? Beginning with the end in mind, the mental blueprint of what you want your life to be. Habit 3, on the other hand, is the physical creation. It's the gritty, hour-by-hour execution of those big life goals. It's where the rubber meets the road. It's taking that massive vision and actually making it happen on a random Tuesday morning.
And that leads to the core struggle we all face. Once we know what matters, we absolutely must prioritize it. Figuring out what you want out of life is, well, it's really only half the battle. You can have the best intentions, the clearest vision, the most beautiful goals in the world, but if you don't actively carve out time for them in your daily schedule, they're just intentions. The real daily challenge isn't usually a lack of vision, it's fighting through the chaos of the world to actually prioritize that vision. So, how do we do that? Let's get into Section 2, the Time Management Matrix. To help us navigate all this daily noise, Covey introduces what is basically a legendary mental map. This is the time management matrix. It takes literally everything we do and categorizes it using two simple filters: urgency and importance. Urgent means it's in your face. It demands your immediate attention right this second. Important, though, has to do with results. If a task is important, it directly feeds into your highest priorities and values. The real magic happens when we start untangling the tasks that are just loud and urgent from the ones that are deeply, truly important. All right, Section 3, breaking down the quadrants. We're going to do a rapid-fire tour of the distinct zones created by this matrix. First up, Quadrant 1. These are tasks that are both urgent and important. We're talking crises, hard deadlines, and genuine emergencies. I like to call this the firefighter mode. When you're operating in Quadrant 1, you are literally just putting out fires. The stakes are huge, the stress is through the roof, and the tasks demand action right now. I mean, you can't ignore a medical emergency or a make-or-break client deadline. But here's the catch. While sometime in Q1 is totally inevitable for all of us, living your entire life here, that's a one-way ticket straight to burnout. Next is Quadrant 3. This is the zone of tasks that are urgent but completely not important. Think constant interruptions, unnecessary meetings, other people's minor emergencies. This is total distraction mode. And honestly, Quadrant 3 is super deceptive because these tasks are screaming for attention, like a phone ringing off the hook or someone popping by your desk. They feel really important in the moment, but take a step back. They rarely advance your true priorities. Usually, they're just advancing someone else's. Spending too much time here leaves you feeling incredibly busy, but totally unfulfilled. And then we have Quadrant 4. Bottom right corner. Tasks here are neither urgent nor important. Welcome to the realm of excessive social media, doom scrolling, and pure time-wasting activities. This is the ultimate escape zone. And look, why do we even end up here? Usually it's because we are just so utterly fried from fighting fires in Quadrant 1 and swatting away distractions in Quadrant 3 that we retreat into mindless scrolling just to survive the day. But this space gives you zero meaningful return. It simply sucks your precious time away without offering any real rest or progress in return. Let's just pause and think about what we've seen. Bouncing frantically between Quadrants 1, 3, and 4, that is exactly what creates the overwhelming noise of being busy. Think about it. You panic to hit a crisis deadline in Q1, you get totally derailed by a pointless interruption in Q3, and by the end of the day, you're so mentally wiped out that you just collapse into the mindless escape of Q4. It's a completely exhausting reactive cycle. You are entirely at the mercy of your environment instead of actually driving your own effectiveness. But there is a way out. Let's look at Section 4, the Quadrant 2 secret. Okay, take a deep breath, step away from the chaos, and welcome to Quadrant 2. These are the tasks that are not urgent, but they are intensely important. Planning, exercise, learning, building deep relationships. I absolutely love calling this the architect mode. This is the quiet, powerful space where true, long-term effectiveness actually lives. Highly effective people spend the vast majority of their time right here. But here is the massive catch. Because these things aren't urgent, they will never, ever demand your attention. Your running shoes aren't going to yell at you to go work out, and a book won't jump off the shelf and force you to read it. You have to be deeply proactive and deliberately choose to spend time here. So why do the most effective people obsess over Quadrant 2? Well, it comes down to a fundamental shift in approach. See, Quadrant 1 is all about waiting for problems to hit and then scrambling to find cures. But Quadrant 2, that's about preparing in advance and focusing entirely on prevention. The absolute fundamental truth of this source material is that prevention is always better than cure. By investing your time in planning, nurturing relationships, and taking care of your health in Q2, you actually prevent the crazy crises of Q1 from even happening in the first place. You're stepping way ahead of the chaos. Which brings us to our final takeaway. Section 5, doing the right things.
As we bring this explainer to a close, let's tie this whole framework together with one simple but totally game-changing paradigm shift. The secret to effectiveness is not doing more things. It is doing the right things. That right there is the absolute core philosophy of Habit 3. Look, doing more is literally pointless if you're just running faster in the wrong quadrant. Being a productivity ninja at crossing off Q3 distractions does not make you effective. True effectiveness requires taking a step back, looking at the matrix, and intentionally prioritizing the quadrant 2 activities that actually align with your deepest values.
So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. Which quadrant are you going to spend your time in tomorrow? Are you going to let the urgent fires and loud distractions hijack your day? Or are you going to step into the architect mode of quadrant 2 and prioritize what truly matters? The matrix is yours to use. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Go out there, put first things first, and I will see you in the next one.
Habit 4, think win-win. You know, this really isn't just some catchy corporate slogan. It's a profound shift in how we approach our work, our friendships, and basically our everyday lives.
So think about it for a second. Do you treat life like a competition? I mean, be really honest with yourself here. When you walk into a meeting, negotiate with a partner, or even just chat with your friends, are you secretly keeping score? We so often act like everyday interactions are this zero-sum game, right? Like it's a constant high-stakes battle for first place.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is just how incredibly restrictive this default behavior actually is. It usually boils down to one of two exhausting outcomes. If you win, well, I lose. Or if I win, you lose. It's such a binary, draining way to live because it dictates that one person's victory absolutely demands another person's defeat. There is just no middle ground.
Stephen Covey actually has a specific term for this highly competitive worldview. He calls it the scarcity mindset. It's this deeply ingrained belief that there's literally only one pie, and if someone else grabs a massive slice of success or resources, there's just less left for you. It's kind of like fighting over the absolute last donut in the break room. And honestly, this mindset is the ultimate driver of fear, jealousy, and endless conflict. Section 1. Embracing abundance thinking. Shifting the paradigm.
To completely change the rules of the game, we need to shift our paradigm to win-win. By definition, this means actively seeking solutions where everyone benefits. And I really want to emphasize that word, everyone. We're not talking about some lazy compromise where both sides just walk away a little unhappy. No, it's about finding a higher, way better path where all sides feel genuinely committed to the outcome.
So, the crucial point is that this approach relies entirely on abundance thinking, completely replacing that scarcity trap we just talked about. Abundance thinking is the realization that, hey, there is plenty out there for everyone. There's enough success, enough recognition, and enough opportunity. You really don't have to fight over slices of the pie because together you can just bake a bigger pie.
All right, Section 2. The 4 core traits. The requirements for win-win. Let's move to and see how this builds, because achieving this mutual benefit definitely requires doing some heavy lifting on your own character. It requires 4 fundamental traits. We're talking about integrity, maturity, and the delicate balance of the last 2, courage and consideration. See, you absolutely need the courage to speak up for what you need, while simultaneously having deep consideration for what the other person needs.
Now, I need to debunk a major misconception right away. Thinking win-win does not mean being soft. People so often think it just means rolling over or giving in to keep the peace. Let me be perfectly clear. Creating outcomes that respect everyone involved takes immense strength. It takes serious emotional fortitude to hold your ground on your needs while stubbornly refusing to trample on someone else's.
Moving right along to Section 3, Win-Win in Action, Real-World Application.
And this brilliantly illustrates what it actually looks like in practice. Imagine 2 departments in the exact same company, fiercely competing for the exact same budget. The old scarcity mindset has them hoarding information and playing politics to make sure they win and the other guys lose. But with a win-win approach, they stop pulling the rope, they sit down, share their actual underlying goals, and collaborate on a creative solution that pushes the entire organization forward. It's a total game changer.
Which brings us to the ultimate payoff here. The absolute strongest relationships you will ever have are built on win-win thinking. Whether we're talking about a corporate boardroom, a marriage, or a lifelong friendship, mutual benefit is the bedrock of lasting trust. When people know, like truly know, that you are genuinely looking out for their interests just as much as your own, your bonds become virtually unbreakable.
I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought to apply to your own life. Are your relationships built to win together, or are you just playing not to lose? Challenge yourself today to step out of that scarcity trap, embrace abundance, and start creating victories that literally everyone around you can celebrate. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope you go out and start finding those win-wins today.
Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Now, I know it sounds incredibly simple on the surface, right? You just listen. But actually mastering this habit, it completely rewires how we interact with the world. It basically forces us to step outside of our own ego and genuinely connect with someone else's reality. Think about this stark contrast in how we normally communicate. On one hand, we've got our default mode, which is listening with the intention to reply. Be honest with yourself here. How often are you really just waiting for your turn to speak? You know, the other person's lips are moving, they're sharing something, but your brain is already formulating that clever comeback, or a piece of advice, or a counter-argument. We aren't really grasping what they mean at all, we're just preparing our own script. But flip that around and you get listening with the intention to understand. And the crazy thing is, very few people actually do this. It requires stepping totally out of your own head, suspending your judgment, and fully entering theirs. It literally flips the script on how we normally operate. So to see exactly what this looks like in practice, let's bring it into the real world. Imagine a close friend comes up to you right now, looks you dead in the eye, and says, "I'm really stressed." Just put yourself directly into that relatable, high-stakes scenario. Your friend is coming to you, they're vulnerable, they're carrying a heavy load, and they chose you to share it with. So what's your very first instinct? What are the immediate words that just want to jump right out of your mouth to fix the situation?
Well, if you're like most people, your brain immediately jumps straight to giving advice. You might fire off phrases like, "Oh, don't worry about it," or "Just relax, it's going to be fine," or "Come on, you're totally overthinking this." Notice how quick and rushed that feels? We rapid fire these unhelpful prescriptions without taking a single second to truly understand the underlying issue. And hey, it's usually well-intentioned, of course. We care about our friends, but the delivery ends up feeling dismissive. We're just rushing to fix the problem to make our own discomfort go away instead of actually sitting with the person to figure out what the problem is in the first place.
Now, what's really interesting here is the antidote to this trap. Covey calls it empathic listening. Let's just slow down for a second and really absorb what this means. Empathic listening is the practice of highly effective people who listen first and try to genuinely understand the feelings involved before offering any solutions at all. Instead of throwing quick fixes at your friend, you pause. You just hold the space for them. You focus entirely on their emotions, their context, and their unique perspective. You are seeking to understand way before seeking to be understood.
So how do we actually turn that beautiful philosophy into a clear, actionable method? It breaks down like this. Step 1, listen before speaking. Step 2, understand before advising. And Step 3, diagnose before prescribing. I really want to lean into that medical metaphor for a minute because it hits the nail right on the head. Think about how absolutely absurd it would be if you went to a doctor, sat down, said my stomach hurts, and before doing a single exam or asking a single question, the doctor just grabs a random bottle of pills and hands them to you. No way, right? You would run out of that office. Yet we do this exact thing in our personal and professional conversations every single day. We hand out life prescriptions without doing the exam. Habit 5 teaches us that we absolutely must do the careful diagnostic work of listening first.
So, the crucial point is why go through all this effort? Well, it's because when people feel genuinely understood, trust grows. It's this incredibly deep, powerful psychological benefit. See, communication isn't just about exchanging data. It's about validating another human being. When you take the time to deeply diagnose before prescribing, the other person feels seen, valued, and safe. And trust is the absolute foundation of every single healthy relationship we have. Without it, the whole shebang just crumbles. Because trust is so incredibly foundational, making this one behavioral shift creates a profound, widespread impact across literally every facet of your life. This simple shift, choosing empathic listening over rapid-fire advice, transforms marriages because partners finally feel heard rather than managed. It transforms friendships by deepening loyalty and mutual respect. It completely transforms workplaces by drastically reducing miscommunication and all that petty conflict. And it is the absolute cornerstone of highly effective leadership. When leaders seek first to understand, they build fiercely dedicated, high-performing teams who know their voices actually matter. Which brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought. Who will you truly seek to understand today? I'd love for you to take these insights from this explainer and put them to the test in your very next conversation. When someone comes to you, whether it's a colleague, a spouse, or a friend, catch yourself before you jump in with that quick fix or clever reply. Stop,
Listen empathetically and focus entirely on diagnosing before you prescribe. I know it's a super challenging shift to make, but the trust and connection you're going to build will be absolutely transformative. Thanks for diving into this with us today, and I challenge you to make Habit 5 a reality in your life right now.
Habit 6, Synergize. We're going to see how actually valuing our differences leads to results we could literally never pull off on our own. It's a massive mindset shift. We're moving away from that solo grind mentality and really unlocking what happens when we truly collaborate. So let's get into it.
Section 1. The New Synergy Equation, Rewriting the Rules of Addition.
Okay, so from the time we're little kids sitting in grade school math, we're hardwired to believe a very strict rule, right? 1 + 1 = 2. You put two separate things together and you get the exact sum of those parts. No more, no less. But Synergy completely throws that standard expectation out the window. In the dynamic space of true collaboration that we're exploring today, 1 + 1 can actually equal 3.
But honestly, it doesn't even stop there. When you move beyond just working side by side and actually start weaving different perspectives together, depending on how effectively you collaborate, that exact same 1 + 1, it might even equal 5.
And get this. When a group really hits peak synergy, when everyone drops the ego and fully trusts each other, 1 + 1 can incredibly equal 10. No joke. I know, mathematically, it sounds totally impossible. It breaks all the rules. But this perfectly represents the exponential power of human potential. When we come together the right way, the output doesn't just add up, it multiplies. It's not just stacking up individual efforts, it's a compounding effect, where the interaction itself creates completely new, unexpected value out of thin air.
Now, what's really interesting here is the formal definition. Synergy literally means the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It's that profound realization that combining forces gives you a wildly better result than the individual pieces ever could alone. Think of it like a musical chord. You play 3 separate notes and, they sound fine. But you play them together, you get this resonant, beautiful harmony that's a completely different and way more powerful experience than just the isolated sounds.
Section 2. The Power of Differences, Unlocking Amazing Outcomes. So how do we actually get there? Well, this is where the magic starts. Amazing things happen specifically when people value differences. And notice I said value, not tolerate. Not just quietly grit your teeth and put up with them. You have to actively value the fact that someone else thinks, acts, or works totally differently than you do. In so many environments, it's just natural to surround ourselves with people who agree with us, creating these cozy little echo chambers. But Synergy demands the exact opposite. It thrives on that positive friction.
Let's look at a sports team. This brilliantly illustrates the point. A winning roster isn't just a bunch of identical clones who all play the exact same way. Imagine a football team made up entirely of quarterbacks. You literally never win a game. Every player brings distinct, highly specialized strengths. You might have one player with just explosive, lightning-fast speed. Another player might not be fast at all, but they're incredibly strategic. They can analyze the opponent's formation in 2 seconds. And then another one might be that strong, vocal leader keeping everyone grounded when the pressure is immense.
And because they bring those diverse, distinct strengths to the table, together they achieve way more than any individual could alone. The fast player can't score if the strategist doesn't map the play, right? And the strategist needs the leader to keep everyone unified. Whether we're talking about a playing field, a corporate boardroom, or even just your own family, this collective effort is exactly how a team shatters individual limits and creates true synergy.
Section 3. Essential Requirements for Synergy. Building the Foundation.
Now, getting a diverse group of people to seamlessly function like that doesn't just happen by accident. As our source material outlines, synergy requires 3 highly intentional traits: open-mindedness, respect, and creativity. And honestly, these can be surprisingly tough to pull off in practice. Open-mindedness requires vulnerability. You have to admit your way might not be the best way. Respect takes deep patience, especially when someone's viewpoint challenges your core beliefs. And creativity? That is the vital spark that weaves those totally different ideas together into a brand new third alternative.
Section 4. Changing the question, a crucial mindset shift.
So here is the crucial point. We have to move away from the ego. When conflicts pop up, our natural human instinct is almost always to ask, who is right? But think about it, that question instantly turns the room into a battleground. You've got clear winners and losers, and everyone's immediately on the defensive. Instead, we have to flip the script and ask, what is the best solution? This one simple shift in language completely changes the psychology of the room.
You separate the problem from people's identities, put the challenge right in the middle of the table, and invite everyone to solve it together.
By changing that fundamental question, we instantly transform our environment. Just think about your own daily interactions for a second. When you shift from who is right to what is best, suddenly, diversity of thought becomes a massive advantage rather than a problem. Differing viewpoints aren't just frustrating arguments waiting to happen anymore. They actually become the exact tools, the distinct puzzle pieces you need to find a vastly better, previously unseen way forward.
Section 5. Achieving true innovation, the ultimate payoff.
When you consistently value those differences, when you build that firm foundation of respect, and you change the questions you're asking, it all leads to this profound realization from our source text. The greatest innovations often emerge when different perspectives come together. Synergy isn't just some corporate buzzword for getting along or compromising, you guys. It is the birthplace of absolute greatness. It's the active engine of innovation, and it pushes us entirely beyond the limits of our own individual imaginations.
Which brings us to our final thought. I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge to carry forward. The very next time you face a difference, whether at work, at home, or anywhere else, are you going to ask who is right? Or will you ask, what is the best solution? Because the choice you make in that exact moment is the literal difference between simple addition and true exponential synergy. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time. Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Now, if you're the kind of person who just loves to learn, someone who's constantly on the lookout for the absolute best ways to manage your energy, well, you are totally in the right place today. We're going to dive into a seriously powerful shift in how we look at work and, more importantly, rest. We're talking about Habit 7, simply known as Sharpen the Saw. So let's unpack this source material and kind of challenge the very foundation of how most of us operate on a daily basis.
Right off the bat, I want you to picture this. Why don't you stop and sharpen your saw? Imagine someone walking up to you and asking that bizarre, completely out-of-context question while you're in the middle of working. Just hold that image in your mind for a second, right? Because it perfectly sets the stage for a really famous anecdote we're about to get into.
So, Section 1, The Productivity Trap. Subtitle, The Woodcutter's Mistake. Let's get right to the story.
Okay, so Stephen Covey tells this famous story of a guy in the woods fiercely, and I mean just furiously, hacking away at a tree with a totally dull saw. He's sweating, he's exhausted, and when a passerby suggests, taking a quick break to actually sharpen his tool, the guy snaps back, "I don't have time. I'm too busy sawing." I mean, think about the absolute absurdity of that mindset for a second. The one single thing that would make his job faster and infinitely easier is the exact thing he claims he literally cannot afford to do just because he's too consumed by the work itself.
Okay, let's dive into this, because sure, it's really easy to laugh at that woodcutter, right? But the source material hits us with a pretty tough truth. So many of us live exactly this way. On one hand, we're over here working hard, grinding through tasks, pushing our absolute limits. But on the flip side, we are never renewing ourselves. We get so trapped by our daily obligations, so busy, quote-unquote, sawing through our emails and projects, that we completely neglect to maintain our own personal saw.
And that brings us to the core concept here, renewal. This is the direct antidote to that woodcutter's trap, and it's what Habit 7 is all about. It's the active, intentional practice of taking pauses to restore and improve ourselves. It's realizing that to maintain true, long-lasting effectiveness, we just can't saw endlessly. I mean, we are the instrument of our own performance. If we don't renew ourselves, we just get dull, inefficient, and honestly, eventually, completely burnt out.
Moving on to Section 2, the 4 dimensions, the framework for renewal. Let's see how Covey actually breaks this down.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that Covey's solution isn't just, go take a nap. It's a completely holistic framework. As you can see, it maps out 4 distinct dimensions: physical, mental, emotional/social, and spiritual. True renewal doesn't come from just hyper-focusing on one area and ignoring the rest. It's like a giant puzzle. It requires a balanced approach. If you're physically fit but mentally totally stagnant, well, your saw is still dull. Or if you're incredibly smart but emotionally drained, you're still not going to be effective. We've got to actively balance all 4. So let's run through these quickly, starting with physical renewal. Look, your physical body is your primary tool, right? It carries you through literally everything you do. So renewing this dimension means committing to the absolute basics: exercise to build up your endurance, nutrition for the right fuel, and of course rest to actually repair and recover. This is your baseline. Without this, everything else falls apart. Next up, we have mental renewal.
And just like our physical muscles, our minds desperately need resistance and fresh fuel to stay sharp. We can't just coast on what we already know. Mental renewal means jumping into continuous reading, seeking out brand new learning opportunities, and pursuing further education. It's all about challenging your intellect, exploring new concepts, and keeping that cognitive blade as razor sharp as possible so you can problem solve like a pro.
All right, then we shift into the emotional and social dimension. We don't just operate in a vacuum. We're inherently social creatures. This area focuses on actively recharging our emotional batteries through our connections with other people. We're talking about investing actual, quality time in relationships, engaging in acts of service for our community, and actively practicing empathy. It's kind of amazing, but when we genuinely connect with and support others, it actually replenishes our own emotional reserves. It's a total win-win.
And finally, we reach the deepest level of all this, spiritual renewal. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean organized religion, though for sure it absolutely can. Mostly, it's about your core. It's about actually slowing down for deep reflection, making sure you are truly aligned with your internal values and connecting with your overarching purpose. It's basically asking yourself why you're out in that forest sawing in the first place. When your values and your actions are fully aligned, man, that provides a profound, enduring source of energy.
Which brings us to Section 3, Continuous Lifelong Growth, the ultimate result. Let's talk about what happens when we put this all together.
The core takeaway here is simple but massive. The more we renew ourselves, the more effective we become. Taking a break to exercise, or read a book, or deeply reflect, that is not stopping work. Actually, scratch that. It is strictly necessary for multiplying our long-term effectiveness. Doing great work literally requires it. A sharp saw is going to cut through that wood in a fraction of the time it takes a dull one. It really is that straightforward.
And that basically brings our whole explainer journey full circle. As the source material so perfectly puts it, Habit 7 ensures continuous growth throughout life. By intentionally carving out time for renewal, you're guaranteeing that you are always capable of learning more, doing more, and just being more. You never ever have to get stuck hacking away with a dull blade.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question for you. Look at your own life right now. Look at your packed schedule and your endless to-do lists. When will you stop to sharpen yours? Seriously, don't let yourself become so quote-unquote busy sawing that you forget to actually maintain the tool. Challenge yourself to find that time for renewal today. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, guys. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Ultimate conclusion and the vital key takeaways of Stephen Covey's iconic framework. If you're a focused learner looking for the absolute bottom line on what makes a truly effective life, well, you're in exactly the right place.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're actually bypassing any traditional agenda today just to keep our momentum high and our attention laser-focused. You've probably seen the individual pieces of this framework before, but are you ready for the ultimate takeaway? Let's bring all of Covey's groundbreaking concepts together and see exactly how they apply to the core of your life.
So, let's quickly review the core foundation. Habit 1, be proactive. Take total responsibility for your actions and your life. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Basically, create a clear, guiding vision for where you want to end up before you take a single step. Habit 3, put first things first. Relentlessly prioritize what actually matters most rather than what's just urgently making noise. And habit 4, think win-win. Always seek mutual benefit in your interactions. Notice how these first 4 habits systematically build your internal foundation of personal responsibility and then perfectly set the stage for outward mutual success.
All right, moving right along. To complete the picture, Habit 5 tells us to seek first to understand, then to be understood, which is all about the vital but honestly often forgotten art of listening deeply to others. Habit 6 is Synergize. Value your differences and collaborate to create something much greater than the sum of its individual parts. And finally, Habit 7, Sharpen the Saw. Continuously renew yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally so you never burn out. The cumulative power of all this is massive. It creates a continuous upward spiral of collaboration, personal growth, and constant renewal.
Now, what's really interesting about this is Covey's absolute greatest lesson. True success is never an overnight achievement. It's a stark contrast between quick fixes, trying to force a result before you're actually ready, and habits practiced consistently over time. It's a lot like steadily watering a seedling. If you take anything away from this explainer today, it's that real, enduring effectiveness belongs entirely to patience and consistency.
So, those 7 habits we just summarized, they are absolutely not quick life hacks or temporary band-aids. They aren't simple tricks designed to help you get ahead in a weekend. Instead, they are deeply rooted principles. They're the fundamental structural building blocks required to grow a truly meaningful, effective, and fulfilling life right from the ground up.
To really cement this idea, we have to look at how Covey masterfully summarizes the entire human experience. He reminds us that it starts incredibly small. Sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap a destiny. Just feel the rhythm of that for a second. It tells us that tiny, invisible changes compound over time to literally shape who we become.
And this brilliantly illustrates that exact, unshakable progression. It all starts at step 1, a single thought. That mental seed drives an action. Repeated actions hardwire into habit. Those habits ultimately forge your character, shaping your armor for the world. And finally, that character determines your destiny. It's a direct, sequential line from a fleeting idea in your head straight to your ultimate life outcome.
So what does this all mean? The crucial point is that your destiny isn't some mystery. It's a daily practice. This is your challenge moving forward. Knowing that every major life outcome traces back to a single mental seed, what thought will you sow today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this empowers you to take control of that very first step.